Okay, welcome. The title to this project is Intensive Interventions for Improving Student Writing Outcomes, the Effects of Modeling, Guided Practice, Direct Instruction, and Peer Revision on Written Responses of 12th Graders with Moderate to Severe Learning Disabilities. So the context of this project is a special education classroom of 12th graders who all are writing at least 2 grade levels below their actual grade levels. And actually the majority of them are probably writing at the middle school level all the way down to a 4th grade level, approximately, both in terms of their spelling, mastery of mechanics, fluency, and content and structure of their writing responses. And we'll see some examples as we go through the project. The major instructional strategies that are used, I divided them up into really 3 different categories. So one are the actual teaching tasks that are done directly. The second category is the engagement of the student. How is the student being engaged in the exercise? And then the final, what are the peer interactions and group activities that the students will be doing with each other. So the teacher activities in terms of the direct instruction is small group tutorials with direct instruction on the writing process, the use of graphic organizers, and the step-by-step guidance through the writing task. This includes guided practice activities with the students and intensive modeling with the students as well, all done in a small group tutorials where I am working with the students, about 3 students at a time, then they are working directly with me. The second part is engagement of the student, and the way that we do this is through social criticism. The writing tasks are related to students' opinions and views on current events in society, and also providing the students with choice both in terms of what they are writing about and the content of their essays themselves. And then finally, for group interaction, peer interaction, because evidence shows that students learn much better when they're doing activities and tasks with their peers as opposed to with an adult. I have included time for peer revisions and collaborative writing where the students together decide on the content that they want to have for a specific writing task. There are 2 major goals for the project. The first goal is that if the students are given a grade level text, they will be able to construct a multiple paragraph essay relating a theme to that text, citing evidence where necessary in order to support it. And the way that we are going to measure the mastery of that goal is through the 6+1 writing rubric, which we will see in a few slides. And they are scoring a 4. They are trying to score a 4 on that rubric, which basically says that they are able to meet the standards of that rubric. The second goal is for the students to successfully use peer group revision to improve the writing samples by 2 points in content and fluency, again based on the 6+1 writing rubric. So the particular goals for the revision exercises are for the students to see and understand how the revision process can actually improve their writing, and the way that they see that is through measured increases on the 6+1 rubric. So here's the rubric that we're using. You can see along the top there are scores from 1 to 6, 1 meaning the lowest score, the student does not meet at all the content or the specific standard for that writing sample. 4 is the level that we are trying to meet. The student in a sort of minimal way has met the standard. And then 5 and 6 we kind of want to push beyond in terms of complexity and mastery of the writing task. The categories on the left, we see content and ideas and organization as the first 2, and so this is the actual content of what the student is writing and the clarity of what they are trying to say, their ability to support their ideas with details. And then organization, are they able to organize their writing in a logical fashion? Do they use paragraphs and transitions so that the reader has an easy time of understanding what the writer is trying to say? And we did some oral activities and discussions about how writing is a form of communication, and that oral communication, we speak, we're trying to transfer message and information to the person that's listening to us, and we discuss how writing is analogous to this but in written communication. And so we need to write in a way where we're actually able to effectively communicate our thoughts and ideas to another person. Vocabulary and word choice and voice are the next two. So this is the student's specific use of the words themselves and the way that they put the words together, their phrasing, so that an individual voice is able to come out of the text. A lot of times we see student writing is rather flat, and these two categories help them focus on improving their word choice and improving their individual voice in their writing. And then the last two are on fluency and conventions. Sentence fluency is essentially their first mastery of a basic sentence or a simple sentence, and then once they have mastered that, their ability to put phrases together in order to form compound and complex sentences. And then the last category is conventions, and these are spelling mechanics, grammar mechanics, understanding of subject-verb agreement, things like that. This is the Foursquare organizer. So one of the main goals of this project was to help students better organize the details that they are able to produce for their writing, giving them a structure and sort of a foundational organizational tool to actually say, okay, how many details do I need and how are these details related? The middle show is for the topic sentence, and it shows how the details sort of surround and relate to the topic sentence, that all the details are initially related to the single sentence that the students produce for the topic sentence. And this is really to help them grasp the fundamentals of constructing a paragraph. So the paragraph you can think of as the primary unit for creating an essay and communicating in writing format. And so the Foursquare organizer helps build mastery of this fundamental unit. This is the writing process, and we use an acronym called POWER, and POWER is an acronym that stands for pre-write, organize, write, edit, and revise. And what I've done here is not only represented the writing process to them with the acronym, but also for the specific writing task that they will be doing, which we'll see in the next slide. I've provided instructions, specific detailed instructions about how to go through each of the processes. So we can talk about in class, okay, this is the writing process, and this is kind of what you do in each step generally, but the students also require assistance in understanding how each specific step of the process applies to the specific task that they are doing. And so again, this provides some additional structure and some additional steps for them to follow while they are completing the writing task. This is the first writing task that they did, and it's essentially a quote with a picture from Dr. Martin Luther King: "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And the prompt itself is sort of designed to be engaging in a visual format more than a text format. So the students are able to sort of respond to the prompt in a way that isn't necessarily based upon their reading comprehension and their understanding of just the words. There's sort of an emotional and contextual level to the prompt as well that they can respond to or include in their writing task. And also, because it's not a specific prompt in terms of telling them how to respond to the quote, it allows for freedom and student choice in determining what it is that they actually want to say in terms of the task. So if we go back to the previous slide, we see for the pre-write that they're only supposed to look at the picture and just think about, well, what do they actually want to say? And I have some guiding questions for them to help them know or to think about what they should or might want to think about when looking at the prompt. So assisting them with sort of these higher level thinking skills and the responses, like what do they need to do, what do they need to think about, and what questions do they need to be asking themselves when they're presented with a writing prompt or a writing question or some kind of writing task. So this is the beginning of the process, and so you can see that this student has completed their Foursquare graphic organizer, There's a couple things that I want to point out for this. First, most students at the very beginning of the project were putting really small phrases into each of the details. So you can see that even the topic sentence is not really a topic, it's more of a title. And this was common throughout several students' initial completion of the Foursquare organizer, all about Dr. King, and you can see the handwriting as well, some issues there. The four details that they have included are some character details, some ideas about the philosophy of Dr. King, what it was that Dr. King was trying to accomplish, how he went about doing that, and then the final sentence, the conclusion, is his assassination. So we'll see through the process about how we use the specific activities, the guided instruction, the modeling, and the revision activities to increase the clarity of what the student is trying to say, the depth and complexity of what the student is trying to say. So what are the other details that we can include to sort of deepen and increase the depth of what the student wants to communicate to the reader. And we're going to do this broken up through several different activities. So this is the initial rough draft, which is basically the student transferring the information that's on the Foursquare organizer onto a lined piece of paper so that they can see the specific relationship between the Foursquare and the paragraph format. It's important for the student to see that the paragraphs that they see on the page can be broken down into these smaller units, and then the reverse is true, that they can take the smaller units, combine them together, and get a fairly substantial paragraph even at the very beginning. We see some edits here in content mostly. The student was having trouble understanding that each sentence had to be a specific thought and that the sentences needed to follow a logical order. So what I've done is given her an example. I've numbered the sentences so that it matches better with the Foursquare, which is numbered. I've numbered the sentences for her so that she can see that they're supposed to go in a specific order. I've added complexity to the sentences myself, though just so as a form of modeling, so that she can see how in the second draft she wants to be thinking about additional details that she can add for each of the sentences. And we did this in a small tutorial where I kind of asked her, okay, here's the initial sentence that you wrote that you were trying to say. What additional thing can we add here in order to increase the complexity? And then I took what she said and added it to each of the numbered sentences. I've also just made a few spelling corrections as well. So after the students completed their initial draft and an initial revision activity with me, we did a group revision practice basically. So this was to target specifically the skill of revising a paragraph. And this is just a sample paragraph that was constructed by me. And it's very basic with really flat language. And so the group activity that we did is the students all had a copy of the paragraph, and we discussed and collaborated as a group how we wanted to improve this paragraph in terms of the content and the details. So most of the edits that are on here have been solicited by the students. The students sort of discussed what they felt was the best or the preferred edit, though they didn't have to all come to a complete agreement. So some students chose to use all of the edits that we decided as a class, but we will see in the next slide that the students had some freedom to make their own edits if they decided. We focused on descriptive words, so all the facts that were here were sufficient in terms of telling the story. So what we focused on was increasing our descriptive words and increasing the kind of vocabulary that we're using to add sensory detail to the paragraph. So here's a student response of the same activity. We see that they've included some of the corrections and some of the revisions that we did as a group, but they've also included some of their own that they decided that they want to use to make the paragraph better. So this is the same student from before in the same MLK writing activity. Here we see a much more lengthy paragraph response. The highlighted text is the text that the student has included post-revision practice. So after we did some of the revision activities and the student went back and looked at their writing, the highlighted text is the text that they chose to add to their writing sample. And we can see that the student has really done a good job of increasing the complexity and the depth of detail that is in their writing. So I know the text is a little bit hard to read, so the highlighted text says, Dr. King was a powerful man because he was a leader and a role model for many people. Dr. King wanted to be nonviolent and help everyone live peacefully. There's some spelling issues in the sort of middle section. And then the author, she's trying to talk about social justice, so she says that one of the social changes that he wanted is the meaning that she's trying to get here. One of the social changes for him was equality and integration of all races. And then she goes on to talk about the marches. So in the first paragraph, she only mentioned that he did marching, and she didn't really give any specific details about it. So here we see a lot of additional clarity of detail in what it is that he was actually doing. So Martin Luther King led many marches. One march he led was the March on Washington, D.C. He also led a march from Selma to Montgomery. And then she again concludes with his confrontations with the police and eventually that he was assassinated. One of the things that got cut off in this text was the sentence at the top, which is the topic sentence. And we still see the same issue of the student confusing title and topic sentence. So she wrote the topic sentence at the top of the paper as opposed to actually as the topic sentence. So just a small correction there. So for the second task, the students were responding to actually a reading task about voodoo magic, and it's a nonfiction text from a series of texts called Phenomena. The level of the text is about a 6th grade level, and so the students are using a text that they're all able to comprehend fairly well. And we read it together as a class and both in small group tutorials, and the students were told that they would have to summarize the text. And so while we were reading it, we did a variety of reading comprehension strategies to identify the main idea, important details, so that the students would be prepared for the writing task. So they were aware of what they were going to have to write about while they were reading, and we did some activities on how to sort of prepare for that. So here's the text itself. So this is a student, his first Foursquare organizer. So the student completed 3 different Foursquare organizers. So they were supposed to be writing a 3-paragraph summary response. The first paragraph was supposed to be on the initial section of the text where they describe 3 of the different girls who were quote-unquote cursed by voodoo magic. The second paragraph is summarizing the second half of the text where it describes how Haitian voodoo priests use drugs to sort of subdue people, and that these subdued people are perceived as zombies by the local population. And then the third paragraph, the students are supposed to respond with their personal opinion on what they think about voodoo magic. So we can see in this first Foursquare organizer that the student, again, their topic sentence is actually a title. It's sort of he's describing what it is that he's going to write about, but it's not really a sentence to introduce the paragraph. And then he has included 4 details, 1 detail each for each of the women that the text talks about, and then a conclusion sentence where he sort of tries to summarize the connection between the 3 women. Here's his second paragraph here on the zombies. There you can see some edits that he's done with my assistant teacher where the squares were a little bit out of order. So this student was having a little bit of trouble keeping a cohesive logical order of his sentences. And so we've changed the numbering here of what his sentences should be together. And we did this in the tutorial with the student. So we discussed with the student what made most logical sense, and it was the student's response that helped us create the new numbering. There are also some guiding questions here in terms of helping him understand what is the logical connection between these thoughts. So one of the things that we're trying to say is, okay, if we say that the most famous act that the voodoo priest perform is the making of the zombies, well, how did they go about doing this? And then why is this important to say, or why is it the most famous act? And so understanding those connections between the details. And then this is the student's third paragraph where they're giving their opinion. So it's a pretty decent but flat topic sentence here. I think voodoo magic is not real. So that's kind of his introductory opinion, and then we work together to come up with reasons why he thinks that it's not real, and correct just a few spelling errors. But for the most part, the student has done a pretty good job. Some assistance with his transition words. In the bottom left box we see for example. So this is one of the phrases that we had worked on in terms of transitioning from a topic to supporting evidence. So this is his rough draft, and it's just the first paragraph, but we can see he's done a pretty good job of taking all of the data, or taking all the sentences that are in the four-square organizer and constructing them into a paragraph. We've done a few spelling edits, and I've underlined a place where he needs to add some detail. And so after this activity, the students went back into their tutorial group and worked together with a peer in terms of suggesting different revisions for the student to make, and then we'll see in the next slide the final result. So here's his final text here with some additional revisions that we made towards the end. But we can see that the student has successfully created a multiple paragraph essay here, that each essay or each paragraph has a topic sentence, that he's included some sufficient detail. The first paragraph has pretty good detail in it, but the second two are still lacking a little bit in terms of actually capturing all of the important information from the text. The student also continued to have some difficulty with the logical connection between their ideas. So the edits that have been made in the first paragraph is basically the reason why it was important that these different girls died at a specific time. And the sort of underlying reason is that they all sort of died very close to the time that this voodoo midwife woman said that they were going to die. And so he kind of missed that was the reason that all of the women were connected, and so we just needed to add that back into the text. So just some final examples here of the change between some initial drafts and some final drafts. So here we have a student's final draft for the Martin Luther King project. We can see that they really don't have any actual structure in terms of the text. The student has a really strong voice and does a good job of adding detail and making the text he's writing feel very original. But he needed a lot of direct instruction in terms of breaking it up into a paragraph structure and having each paragraph have a single idea. So this is his final draft for the Voodoo writing project, and we can see a significant improvement in the structure and use of paragraph in this text. So although the paragraphs are a little bit short, he's done a really good job of breaking up his information into individual paragraphs and making sure that each of the paragraphs contain just one topic to really improve the clarity of his writing. And then for the last example here, we're going to see some revisions that the student has done in a small group tutorial. So with the small group, the two different highlighted colors are basically having the student see visually how they've combined sort of incorrectly two different ideas. So the text that's highlighted in yellow is text related to the zombies, and then the text highlighted in pink is text related to his personal opinion on voodoo magic. So what we did as the activity is, as a group, is we read through each of the sentences and we determined, okay, which paragraph does this sentence belong to, and we highlighted either yellow or pink. just a few other minor edits that we did. The major revision was for the structure and making sure everything was in the right paragraph, but there's a few spelling corrections that we made, and missing a title as well. So this is his final text, and we can see that the paragraphs have been improved in terms of the structure. The content of it is more related. So the second paragraph is only information related to voodoo magic, the zombie voodoo magic, and the third paragraph is only sentences and information related to his personal opinion on voodoo magic. He also improved in the first paragraph the logical clarity of the three women. So his first, and one of the corrections we made here was that it was unclear. He always said the woman, and it was unclear about which of the three women he was talking about. So here we see the use of the word first, second, and third. And so this was an edit you can see at the top, that we said, okay, how do we want to order these women so that the reader can understand which one you're talking about? And we decided on using first, second, and third. And so he's done that here in the first paragraph. Okay, so kind of a summary of final thoughts. First, the students were most successful when they had a very clear structure about what it is that they needed to do. So the clear structure about the writing process itself, clear structure about what you needed to do for each step of the writing process, clear structure about how to formulate a paragraph, clear structure about how to put paragraphs together, and the ordering and the logical consistency. And so the more sort of structure you can provide to the student, the more successful that they can be in the writing task. A clear structure on how the task is going to be graded, what are the expectations and the goals of the task. The students need step-by-step guidance on how to go through each of the steps. So you can't just give them a series of steps and expect them to go off and complete it successfully on their own first time. You need to sort of walk them through each of the steps, model how to complete the steps, use guided practice to sort of assist them through each of the steps, and then let them complete the steps independently. So each of the steps that you lay out in the structure, you need to do modeling and guided practice of that. It's important to use student collaboration in the writing, so you don't want to just collect the writing, revise it on your own independently, and just hand it back to the student. Work with the student doing the revisions, basically. Solicit their responses and their questions and their ideas about how to make their writing better. Ask questions in terms of clarity. Say, okay, I don't understand here. What is it you're trying to say? And have the student repeat orally what it is that they're trying to say, and help walk them through how to put that down onto the piece of paper. Make sure that you're intervening in student-specific skills. So the students in your classroom are going to have many different levels of writing in each of the different areas. So one student might have a very strong vocabulary but have poor structure. Another student might really understand paragraph structure but has poor mechanics. Another student, maybe they are able to come up with a lot of details, but they're not really sure how to include a logical consistency between them in terms of moving from thought to thought in a reasonable manner. And so make sure that you're intervening specifically where the student has areas of weakness. Make sure that you provide students with plenty of choice. They need to be engaged in the project. They need to feel like what they're doing is meaningful and that they have kind of the freedom to write about what they're most interested in. Make sure that the writing tasks and the content that you use for the task is challenging for the student. Even if the student is writing at a fairly low level, many levels below their actual grade level, you can still work with them to have them do writing tasks that are challenging and age and grade appropriate. You never want to sort of baby the students in terms of what you're having them write. Make sure that they're doing tasks that are age appropriate. And keeping things relevant too. So even students may not be strong at writing, but they still understand the world around them, and they still understand kind of what's happening in society, their own context and their own problems and issues that they're going through, both as an individual and the groups and communities that they are part of. So you want to make sure that the tasks that they are completing are relevant to them and their particular situation. So that does it for a presentation of the content of the project. You can also see in the notes and in the comments, I've added a link to the graphical data, which is basically a mean average and a mean summary of the scores of the students on a 6+1 writing rubric. And you can see that the students have been very successful in improving kind of across the board in each of the categories. And so I'll put a link to that image in the notes. Thank you.